Alright guys, welcome back to part 2 of getting your own custom model inside the game, or inside the UDK rather. So last time we went ahead and got our model in, our textures in, and created materials for each of those textures. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to actually dive into the source code and get our skeleton and material put in to the Unreal Tournament, or the UDK rather, for our custom game. So what you're going to want to do is you can actually close out of the content browser, leave well actually in your case you're going to want to close that. Yeah, sure, that's fine. Save that. Because you're going to be editing source. I've already edited it, so I know what it's supposed to be and how it is. Now, first things first, you're going to go into GS-Pawn, which is our pawn file. Let's go ahead and increase this a little. Now, you're going to see that I've added this giant begin objects name is equal to WPawn skeletal mesh component with all this stuff in it, all the way down to line 48. Fortunately for you, you don't actually have to type that. If you go into utpawn.uc, which is inside the UDK source directory, you can find it there, on line 5334, you will find that same block of code just waiting to be copied and then paste it over into this one, and all you have to do is change out the default mesh. So in order to do that, unfortunately I closed it, but we actually have to have our editor open, so that's my bad. Hopefully you didn't make my mistake and you left it open and didn't listen to me. Then if you did, shame on you for not listening to me. Shame on you. Alright, so we're going to go back to our package. You know, actually it's kind of a good thing. So you see how it's kind of grayed out? It's not dark, but it's kind of light. This means that it's loaded, but it's not fully loaded. And what that can do is leave out some assets sometimes, so it's a good idea whenever you try to open it, fully load it. And you'll see it's nice and bright now. Now, to get that, what you're going to do is right-click. Where is it? Copy full name to clipboard. There it is. Copy full name to clipboard, and what that's going to do is it's going to give you this bit right here. So when I paste, you'll see it says skeletal mesh, which is a cast, and then the path. So it's package name, group name, then the actual asset name of whatever I'm after. So that's good. Okay. Also, while I was off camera, I noticed something, and I haven't had a chance to test it, but maybe one of you guys would like to. I saw this little bit right here. And I'm wondering if maybe this is what I was talking about in the last video where the pawn offset for the model was kind of off. You guys will see that later, I'm sure, when you get your models in, but maybe take a look at that. Definitely something that may help us out. I'll look into it later, but maybe a good homework for you guys. Check that out. So anyways, we can close that now. We can also close our pawn once we get... Well, actually, don't close your pawn because you're going to need this string in just a minute. So go ahead and paste that in there, save it, and then go to GS game. Now we have to define two new things. First off, we need to define the default pawn class to pull from our generic pawn, or generic shooter.gspawn, and then we have to define what we call a player replication info class. And so we call it by that variable name is equal to class, and then the path generic shooter.gs player replication info. Now those two, or at least this file, will we create in just a minute. But first, the thing on replication info. In Unreal Tournament, since it is a networked game, the developers decided that instead of making your single-player games have just a standard mesh, they made it so it's always completely replicated. Now what that means is that, or what replication means rather, is what's going to be copied to local clients. So replication info by extension would be the information that's going to be copied to each client. In this case, since it's player replication, it's player information that's going to be copied to the clients. So that's all that is, just in a general sense. Replication is something we'll go over later on, but just for now, just understand that it's information that's going to be transferred over the network during network games, and for that matter for single player games, at least when you're extending from from UT game. Those rules don't quite stick if you're using UDK game or simple game or any of those other ones. But just for now, just know that's what it is, and copy that in there. Make that a little bigger so you can see it. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a file, GS player replication info, and it's going to extend UT player replication info. That way it's fully compatible with our pawn, which is a UT pawn, because UT pawn uses UT player replication info, so we're just one level over. And the only thing we're overriding is this variable char class info. And what it is it's a class with the path generic shooter.gspawn_family info, which is a file we'll make in just a moment. Now, what family info is, is I would be willing to describe it as the physical characteristics of the pawn. It is about as simple and basic as I can get it. You know, your model, some materials, your team materials, your gibs. That's pretty much it for that. You can also, later on if you want to, this is where you would define the voice class. So the sounds that your pawn will make, that's also defined in here. But that's not in this tutorial. If you guys want to do that, that's real simple. Just look at UT player replication info. You'll see all that information in there, and you can simply copy and paste your sounds into it. It really isn't that hard, especially now that you guys know how to put items into the content browser. Okay, so we've defined all this stuff. Let's go ahead and make gspawn_family info, and it's going to extend utFamilyInfo_Leandri, however you pronounce that, and you're going to define it as abstract, which means you're how do I put this in a non-computer science way? Pretty much that you're looking at utFamilyInfo_ whatever that name is, and you're abstracting it, or just think of it this way: you're basically copying it, more or less. I know that sounds kind of redundant, but it's not when you actually know what it is doing. Just take it for what it's worth. You need it there. Okay, so you don't actually have to define any methods in here, not right now anyways. We don't have to worry about that today. But then default properties, we're going to define a family ID of gspawn. We're going to set the character mesh equal to the skeletal mesh that we defined in gspawn, so this guy here, the same string, put it in there. Then you're going to have to define character team head materials at index 0 and the body materials at 0. And at 1, of course, because that's red and blue team. And make sure they're none. This way that UT won't actually overwrite the material you have on the model already. Because if you don't, it'll throw like a really weird mix of cathode and whatever player decides to give you that day on there. This way it just uses the standard mesh defaults. But if you were to make a team-based game, this is where you would stick those materials. Just a note about that, I've actually, in triangulation anyways, we don't actually use a body material. I only define a head material. And it actually, because the model uses only one material to begin with, not two, it does all the way down. So if your material is the same way and you only use one because the skin only has one, then don't worry about it. Just define the head material and it'll copy all the way down. But you guys would have figured that out anyways, I'm sure. But just a little note. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I don't think we missed anything. Nope, we haven't missed anything. That's really it. Actually, as you can see, I did copy this out of triangulation. Just took out all the stuff that was triangulation except for that little text there. This should be 1. Actually, technically it should be 0, along with the other ones, but I'll mess with those later. Alright, so we got all that defined. So go ahead and compile your code, make sure it works. If it doesn't, usually it's a pathing issue. Make sure the path is there. It'll give you a warning saying something along the lines of cannot find asset, or cannot find, in this case, skeletal mesh at this location. Just make sure you spelled everything right. Usually it's something simple like that. But next what we're going to do is, once it compiles and it's fully working, go ahead and open, close that. Go ahead and open up the editor and load up one of your levels. Doesn't matter which. For our sake, I'll do the city square. Now, just a note, what I've done here is taken our two teleporters and smashed them together and faced one back towards the other. That way it acts kind of like a mirror, just so we can kind of see it. It looks kind of funny inside it there, but that's alright. Alright, so as you can see, there's our bunny model. He looks really ridiculous inside through the teleporter, but that's alright. And he's in there. He's not quite floating. That's good. Yeah, so I actually lined that up pretty good. 66 was about right for this model. So he's in there. You can see that the gun's stuck to the socket. His arms aren't moving for some reason. It's probably a skeletal issue. That's something that your modeler will have to take care of, not a programmer's issue. And that's good to go. Now let's go ahead and type in a little console command here. We'll do camera. We'll type in third person, and you can kind of see him. Since his arms are stuck down, I'm not sure why he's doing that, but like I said, that's something that we'll have to worry about later. I'll tell you what I will do though. Do that. So we got a few minutes. I'll go ahead and launch another version of this. Actually, we'll close, and we'll close you. Launch. We'll actually make a custom game so you guys can see this. City Square. Let's see what we're making sure. Number of opponents 0. Actually, we want that to be 1. That way we can get somebody in. That's good. Multiplayer, join. This thing can be kind of temperamental. It actually was nice to me today. Typically, it likes to mess with me and not let me join my own computer. Waiting for other players. There we go. Alright, so the first player, move him into the center here. Second player. Actually, he's still floating a little bit. Oh well. And his gun's missing. That's kind of weird. I'll have to go back and check on that. The gun should be there. It's probably a problem with the attachment. It's probably not replicating properly. But either way, you guys can see the custom model in there. And like I said, you can tweak this distance by going into the model editor and pushing it down. So it probably needs to go down, I don't know, probably about 30 more units, I'd say. But as you can see, our model's in there. He's good to go, and as you can see, we can see ourselves. So that's pretty good. It looks good. It's not the highest res model, but definitely works. Alright. So as always, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to email us or anything else like that. Let's see. Anything else before I let you guys go? Oh yeah, not many people have put in about the reflector yet. I'm still waiting for a couple more people to try it out before I go and post the solution. If you guys remember what that is. I actually don't have a beam-based weapon right now. I just have the rocket launcher. So it's just going to explode, but our reflector wall was just to deflect projectiles. So, still waiting for a few things on that. But aside from that, guys, thanks for joining in, and stay tuned for next time. I believe we're going to do a canvas tutorial, so making our HUD a little more robust. And until next time, guys, thanks for joining in.